who are much better equipped than them. Anyway, the BJP now went to town and said, action must be taken, but they were in the VDCs, so they had the arms. And now most people in Jammu don't want to concede this point. So therefore, social media, Facebook, blogs, networks and all of that is a very important way of getting to know how to win the fight. But we can't win it alone. We have to build an international alliance. We are in BRICS, which includes Brazil, the Republic of South Africa, India, China, and Russia. But in BRICS, we are not really working on much in terms of having a better international system or more democratic rights. In fact, Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, has kept two mothers in jail because they did a rock dance which the Russian Orthodox Church did not like. So that's what happens. You lose communism, you get the church. And what comes out? Basically, we know globalization is bad. Globalization impoverishes the people, so it attacks all our democratic rights. But we will have to find our own alternative to globalization, because our economies are not the same, our resources are not the same, and our human rights network is not the same. But when India fought for freedom, Gandhiji used to say that we have fought the strongest imperialist power in the world. Unfortunately, if I was asked to say, I would say that India is the strongest imperialist power in South Asia. So we should work to go against this. We cannot be pro-poor, anti-liberal if our foreign policy is hegemonic, militarist, and usually full of lies. After this cheerful introduction, I would like to thank all of you for calling me and tell you you'll always be welcome in JNU.
Thank you, Kamal. I'm kind of standing in for Colin, who had to go to the court, so he had to do the introduction and everything. I was asked to say something about solidarity in South Asia. So I think just keep what Kamal had just said about India. Most of it is largely true for the rest of South Asia. But what do we mean by solidarity? Can anyone tell us what do we understand by solidarity?
Sharing shared issues, integrating ourselves to counter arbitrary action.
Yeah, that is part of it. But when we talk about solidarity amongst people belonging to different states, we are basically talking about deliberate sort of decision. Okay. Deliberate decision to come together with the people like ourselves in the other countries to stand up and struggle for a common cause. For example, you must have heard about this slogan, "Workers of the World Unite." And of course, workers are divided in almost 200 countries in this world. So how do, or can they unite, or is there any need for them to unite? So I'm sure I don't need to explain that. There is clearly a need for the workers to unite within each country and then across countries, because as Kamal was telling us, there are problems which overlap boundaries and borders, and there are problems which are global in nature, and therefore the need, especially by the poor, the working people, to come together and act in solidarity where possible. So if you look at South Asia now, when we talk about South Asia, we are essentially talking about 8 countries which are members of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So we start with Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. If you look at these countries, there are 3 countries which constitute about 97% of South Asia. And these are India, about 80%, Pakistan, about 10%, and Bangladesh, about 7% in terms of land mass and population. So, and if you look back a little, these 3 used to be one country. And so they got divided, partitioned, and the rest of South Asia is only 3%, which means 5 countries are 3% of SAARC. So there is a very glaring asymmetry in SAARC, where these larger countries, they determine the course of events in South Asia, and as we can see, mostly in a negative sense. Because why does that happen? Again, if you look at South Asia, all South Asian countries are multi-ethnic or multinational countries. They are not one nation countries. So Afghanistan, and each country has one majority ethnic group, and each country has one dominant religion. They are multi-religious countries, but one dominant religion in each country. So a religious or ethnic majority in one country becomes an ethnic or religious minority in the next country. And we all know that since the 19th century, when the British undertook the first census, and they told us how many Hindus and how many Muslims and Sikh and Buddhists lived in India. Before that, nobody knew. People knew that, there are people belonging to various religions, but nobody knew the exact number, and that led to the communalization of politics in the subcontinent. So in Afghanistan, Pashtuns are the majority. Afghanistan is a predominantly Muslim country, but there are sizable groups called the Uzbeks and the Tajiks, and they and Pashtuns, they have always been fighting each other. Even during the occupation by Soviet Union, these 3 groups did not come together. And then you come to Pakistan. So Pashtuns are a small ethnic group in Pakistan, but bordering Afghanistan. So we have these ethnic or religious minorities overlapping the borders between at least 2 countries. So we come to Pakistan, where Muslims are a majority, but Muslims are again divided into at least 4 what we call nationalities. Punjabis are about 57%. Then you have the Sindhis, Baloch and Pathan, and they have their own sort of historic differences over how do they want to run their lives, how do they want to organize. But 95% of the population is Muslim, so Islam is the dominant religion. And in each, and then you come to India, so you have one dominant religion and one dominant kind of, you can't really call it an ethnic group, but for example, the Hindi-speaking areas of India are predominant in terms of both population as well as their share in running the state and in the population. So these sort of so-called majority groups, both in religious terms and ethnic terms, they tend to shape the states according to their own visions, which are often in conflict with the other ethnic or religious groups. So there is kind of intra-state and interstate conflicts which characterize South Asia. And then you go to Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has a majority Muslim population, and but there is a sizable number of non-Muslims there also. So there is a conflict at that level. Sri Lanka has a predominant Buddhist Sinhala population. There are significant numbers of Tamils. So you have these conflicts in all the countries, and then Maldives, a very small country with about less than 4 lakhs of population, predominantly Muslim. That is one country in the world where you have to be a Muslim to become the citizen of Maldives. If you are not a Muslim, you will not be given citizenship. So, and religion is extensively used for political purposes in all the South Asian countries. So that is one major problem that we face. It's easier to use religion to mobilize public support and votes in the election rather than solid concrete programs for the ordinary people. So everyone uses religion, and in each religion then there are various sects who differ in their perceptions of religion. So there are those conflicts, like you see in Pakistan. Shias are being targeted now increasingly all over Pakistan by the Taliban type religious group. So then one very important factor that we have to keep in mind, and that needs solidarity, is that the borders between none of the South Asian countries are defined and agreed upon. All these borders were created by the British colonialists. So between Afghanistan and Pakistan, we have this line called the Durand Line, drawn by some gentleman called Durand. And that line is a disputed one. Between India and Pakistan, all the borders are still, Siachen, Sepri, Kashmir, wherever, all the borders are disputed. Between India and Bangladesh, there is a boundary dispute. And between India and Sri Lanka, there is a dispute over borders in the sea, in the Palk Strait. So you have all these disputes around the non-demarcation of boundaries. And after 65 years of independence, and then between India and China, again this McMahon line was drawn by another British gentleman. These elites, and in my view, deliberately want to maintain these disputes, because once the border disputes is gone, there will be questions of then why do we need to keep. Now people tell you 3,000 kilometer long border